you could implement that might, you could throw it out there for a year and see how people react to it and see if it improves, and just commit to monitoring and evaluating. You can make it that simple. The start, it's almost like, well, we're trimming a house, we're cutting it this long, and we maybe want to get down to this short, right, to make it fit the community. So
I just have something to add too. These are stringent because sometimes it'll be like one person speeding down one road all the time, and you're gonna spend all this money to try and address one person. So I think even if it doesn't get past the detailed screening, there's other things to look at, like what we've measured or what we've mentioned here, like the community safety zone and stuff like that. But maybe it depends what the concern is. If it's related to pedestrians, there's like things in the OTM, Ontario Traffic Manual books, that might address the problem.
Other than that, yeah.
Other than traffic calming, like
Right.
maybe the problem isn't even related to traffic calming. You collect your information, you're seeing more to the story.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So like Lindsay's saying, then is committing to just doing the initial screening process and going out and gathering the information. That might be, a place to start and
Yeah.
Exactly what even if you have one person complaining, it doesn't take much to ask a few questions. It would be staff. It doesn't cost anyone. And then do an initial non-costly way of looking at the issue and seeing if it needs to go any further. That can be part of the initial process.
Right.
Instead of 25% going out to the neighbors. And let's face it, if you got 120-meter area, you got 12 homes, you got we're going to adjourn and we'll be back in 5 minutes to start. If staff and Councillor Martin come into the chambers, please. All right, everyone, it's now 7:10 PM and we're going to call this meeting to order. And thank everyone for coming tonight, and I apologize for being a little bit tardy on starting this one. We did have an educational session prior to that went a little bit long. So this meeting will be called to order. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, then we'll rise for O Canada, please. Thank you. And we'll start out with confirmation of minutes. I have here moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Craven. Minutes of the Township Mapleton Council meeting held on April 26, 2022 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda. Any questions or comments on that from council? All those in favor? That's carried. And moving in matters arising from the minutes, we don't have any. We now move under the Planning Act. We have a couple matters under the Planning Act tonight. We'll start out with item 6.1, which is a public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and to give consideration to an application ZBA 2022-04 for proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The subject lands are located at 74 Main Street East in Drayton. And the purpose and effect is to allow a 4-unit street townhouse development. Right now, we'll listen to the clerk regarding statutory requirements. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff can confirm that the agencies and Mapleton staff were provided with the required notice by email on April 21st. There were no issues or concerns. Agency comments are attached. Proper postings were completed April 21st. County of Wellington Planner Jessica Rahim comments dated May 3rd are included in the package. Mapleton Planning Report and draft bylaw prepared by Linda Redmond is included in the package. And there were no comments received prior to the agenda. However, we do have since had a couple of comments, and I've been asked to read one out by Mr. David Nader, or Nader. He's not here, I don't believe. So I'll go ahead and read that out. Mr. Nader writes, and he's watching tonight on the live stream, that I am writing to submit my opposition to the rezoning of Plan Bolton Survey Lot 236. The proposed amendment to the Mapleton zoning bylaw is short-sighted and benefits only the applicant. Home values have been increasing in this neighborhood, which is good for the community and for the township. This amendment would reverse that trend. Furthermore, the granting of minor relief from minimum lot area, minimum rear yard, and minimum front yard setback would allow the developers to construct city-style townhouses on Main Street in Drayton, making it an eyesore for everyone traveling through the village. This community doesn't want new housing that sticks out like a sore thumb, especially not when it will cram 4 families into a single lot. In brief, this is a bad plan for the practical and social reality of our community and for the rural quality that defines Mapleton. Rezoning to residential is okay, but the property should fit in with the neighborhood, which is the sole point of these bylaws in the first place. Thank you for listening. Sincerely, David Nader, 68 Main Street East, Drayton. The second letter we have is from Daniel Howe, and Anne Marie Hagan. Are they here? Will she be allowed to speak next? Yep. Okay, that's great.
Well, actually, we'll get you to speak in just a few minutes, okay? Did you want the letter read or you're going to read it? Okay, we'll let you go in a few minutes then. Is that everything that you have, Mr. Clerk? All right, so we'll now hear from the planner, Linda Redmond. Linda?
Thank you, Mayor. So this application, as already stated, is for the development of the lot for 4 street townhouse units. The current zoning on the property is an institutional zoning with a site-specific exemption to allow the parking of school buses. The institutional zoning, the lot at one time was one whole lot with the schoolyard, and then it was sold. So the institutional zoning really shouldn't continue to remain on this property because that's really not the use of this site. So having said that, we have met with the applicant and gone over the provisions, and in reviewing it, we determined that there were a few deficiencies under the zoning bylaw for this use, very minor ones in our opinion. And that includes the front yard setback reduction. So 19.8 meters or 8 feet is required, and they're providing 18 feet. A reduction in the rear yard setback of the units from 24.9 to 12 feet. And then a minimum lot area per unit. So the way the criteria works is it's a per unit lot area, but there's the overall lot area. So overall, they almost meet the minimum lot area requirement, but we know that in the future, they might want to come back and sever the units off to have that option to sell them independently of one another. And once they do that, then that's when they run into the situation where they don't have enough area for the 2 interior units. The 2 outer units are meet or exceed the minimum lot area. I also want to note that the lot frontage, it exceeds, it's over 10 meters, and the bylaw only requires 6.5. And why that's important is because they have quite a bit of frontage, it provides an opportunity for on-street parking, whereas the 6.5 meter frontage limits what kind of on-street parking would be available in that area. So that's a good thing. The reason they don't meet the minimum area is because the depth is shallow on this property. The other thing I want to mention about this application is that the initial submission did meet the front yard setback requirement. But after speaking with the planning department, it was our suggestion that they bring the units a little bit closer to the road to provide a little bit more of a rear yard space for the units. So they have some private amenity areas, a little bit more area in the back for, their barbecue or what have you. So that was why that variance came about. So again, that was at our recommendation. So the units, this development is ideally located. It's within the built boundary of Drayton, and having gone through the growth plan exercises over the past year. You've heard the term the built boundary. And what's important about that is the official plan requires 20%, currently 20%, but I know that the new official plan, they're hoping to reduce that to 15%, which is still high, but they require 20% of all intensification to be located within the built boundary. And as we know, in Drayton, there's limited opportunities for that in the current downtown area. So it's nice to see some of these types of developments come along because it meets that criteria in the OP that we're trying to achieve. So from that perspective, we support this application. It's also providing affordable housing and an alternative housing type within Drayton, which we don't see a lot of. So there's a lot of, positive reasons behind this application. Now, this application will also be required to go through site plan approval. So at that time, that's when we can look at other requirements like fencing and landscaping and that sort of thing, if that's what council wants to see. And then the only other issue I want to raise is there was a concern raised about the sight lines at the intersection of the main street there. The bylaw does provide triangle sight lines. So there is a 7.5 meter setback that a triangle that you can't put a fence or any type of high landscaping. So that sight line is maintained. So that's where we address those types of issues. It's through the zoning bylaw. So other than that, I have no concerns with the application currently in front of council.
Thank you, Linda. We'll now hear from the applicant, Tim Seaford. You here? Like to say anything, Tim, about this application? If you are, just stand at the podium and hit the button there, please.
Yeah, so I guess, sorry, I guess when I think of it, it's the excitement of providing an opportunity for what we'll define as affordable housing, but it's not for say, like we still want to provide a quality housing. Like affordability is not cutting quality or corners or any of that stuff. So behind all that too, that's the biggest proponent of it, is that we want it to look nice. We want it to provide appeal to the community. We have it here. Our target on it is for more retired type people that are looking to downsize and have a smaller footprint. So that's sort of the general consensus of the project for us. And just to, provide everybody, I know when we read this, it doesn't necessarily say that, but that's how I'm looking at it and sort of the ideas behind it. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, very open to talking and working with people. So if there's anything here.
Thank you, Tim. We'll get to the questions in a minute.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from those in attendance. Please indicate, step up to the mic, hit the button, and state your name and address for the record. We'll first hear from those in support of the application. Is there anybody here wishing to speak in support of the application? Now we'll hear for those opposed. Anybody that's opposed to the application, please take your step up to the mic.
I would say that I'm opposed. You just have some questions.
All right, just please hit the button there, state your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Anne Marie Hagan. I live at 69 Main Street East, so that's opposite Main Street East from the townhouse development. So I live there with my husband, Daniel Howe, and we've reviewed the application and both fully support the change in zoning to residential. And we also support the use of this vacant land for infill housing. It makes good sense. And when you read the application and hear the planner's comments, you see how it fits like provincially for the county and here to be able to provide more housing using the land that's here in town. We do have a few questions. Some of them are more about process and some are more about the specifics of this application. In terms of the process, the notice that we received of this public meeting indicated that, quote, other variances may be considered, which we assume means other variances in addition to those mentioned in the application. And we just want to check that if that happens, what is the process? Are neighbors notified of further variances and able to make comment? And we're also wondering if we will have the opportunity to review and comment on the site plan and the design of the units. For example, we'd certainly hope that Unit 4, which is the closest one to the corner, has some kind of architectural element such as a veranda or bay window, so it's not like a blank brick wall facing Main Street. That will enhance the look of the townhouse development and fits with what you said and integrate better with the surrounding neighborhood, which does have many historic buildings, as you all know. The application indicates the townhouses will be rentals and then the lot severed and sold. So we had a question about the variance on the size of the lot so that 2 of the lots would be 2,225 square feet. And what we were wondering is, does Drayton currently have any lots that are that small? We're wondering if allowing lots that small sets some concerning precedents. For example, a lot that now has 1 home on it suddenly being subdivided into a number of many small lots. And the proposal mentions that the townhouses will be 1 story with pitched roofs. So we were just wondering, does that make it comparable to the seniors apartments across the street at 59 and 61 Main East, or what the actual height is? What we wanted to also ask is if the variances are all approved at this meeting, when would it be expected that construction would begin? And then how long will the construction process last? Our concerns are twofold: noise and safety. Noise, because we're right across the street, as are other people, and my husband works from home and his office is actually at the front of the house near Main Street. And we both love the peace and quiet of living in such a lovely small town. So anything that can be done to minimize the noise impact on the neighborhood would be appreciated. We're requesting that there be at least 1 day a week, preferably Sunday, free of construction noise, and that they try to stop the construction noise after, about 8 o'clock in the evening. With regards to safety during the construction process, we were wondering if the developer is required to submit a plan that outlines where workers on site will park and how the process will deal with the safety of pedestrians and the busy traffic on Main Street. And as I know that you all know, the traffic going down the hill into Drayton on Main Street East is often ignoring the traffic limits. I was so happy when I saw yesterday you put up this sign, and because I always have someone right on my tail. People just ignore that. And we just wanted to raise something that might not have been considered. I understand it meets the sightline requirements, but we know from going down that road and we turn left at the bottom of the hill onto Smith Drive, which is the other side of John Street. And then our driveway is like right there. So we are going down a hill with people right behind us. And sometimes they're turning the same corner, not expecting that we're going to slow down and turn. And the number of times we've almost been rear-ended is amazing. Both Daniel and I have at times not turned into our driveway to avoid being hit. And we're just concerned that when you look across at John Street, it will now, right at that same intersection, have not 1, but 4 driveways right there, bang, bang, bang. And, we just wanted to raise that and wonder whether the layout of the new design could could be improved in the safety way, or whether there are traffic calming measures that could be taken that will reduce the risk of having those 4 driveways and lots of pedestrians. I don't know if there's intention to have a sidewalk put in there, but lots of people walk on the road there. So, just wanted to raise that. Anyway, Daniel and I thank you for the opportunity to ask our questions and express our concerns. We simply ask that we're kept up to date on any variances or approvals on the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. There's a whole lot to unpack there. Let's see if we get through some of this. Linda, there's a bunch of questions there that will be for planning. Further variances, you talked about a little bit about that. Go ahead. I'm sure you wrote them all down like I did.
There we go, through you, Mayor. So I've highlighted the questions I can answer. There's other questions I think other people in the room can chime in when I'm done. So the notice that indicates other variances may be considered, that's a standard comment we put in just to advise the public that sometimes at the public meeting, other things can come up between the time the application was submitted and the time that we're writing comments. So we put that in there just to make them aware that there could be other items discussed. If a change is significant enough and it goes beyond what the intent of the notice was for, then we would recirculate a new notice with the amendment and would hold another public meeting. So sometimes, like for instance, that they're asking for a reduction in the front yard by a meter, and maybe at the time of the meeting we realized they actually need 1.2 meters, that kind of a thing. We wouldn't recirculate something like that because it's still within the intent and it's very, very minor. But if it's a bigger change, then we would absolutely re-notify and have another meeting. The question regarding the size of the lot and setting precedents, we review each application on its own merits, and the decisions are based on the application before council. So it doesn't set a precedent. And I don't know if there's other lots in Drayton that are that size. But I can tell you that that size of those interior lots is not out of the norm for street townhouses. So there could be in the future more applications for that size, but it is a minor reduction from what the bylaw allows. The site plan question, will we have an opportunity to review and make comments on the site plan? The site plan process is not a public process. The intent is that when the zoning is done, that any of those matters or items that council would like to see through the site plan process are discussed at council. The applicant or the landowner has indicated, a request to see some sort of architectural features on the exterior unit. I think that's a great idea, especially considering it's on the main street coming into Drayton, and that's part of the gateway into Drayton. I think that's a good idea, and those are simple requests to put in at the site plan stage. So those are the planning questions I can answer, but I think there's some other questions like sidewalks and traffic calming and
Yeah, we'll get to those, and I'll just going to go over to Tim. So some of the questions might have been for you when it comes to when would construction begin? I don't know if you know that answer yet, or how long construction would last, and the safety and parking on the site while you're doing the work. If you can answer that, it'd be. Sure. Sure, thank you.
I'll just go through a couple. I made some notes from your questions here. So slated time of construction to start. That's a tough one for us to answer right now because obviously we still have to go through site plan application and figure out some servicing stuff with the town and their consultants as well. So, I mean, ideally we'd like to be in the ground as early as we can, but realistically the earliest is probably September. Could be into late fall or the winter by the time we get through the process of approvals. So construction schedule, it's really not gonna be much different than building a house or two there. So if things go good, and you don't have delays with materials and trades and stuff, you could be anywhere 5 or 6 months, but you could be upwards a year to finish it, I would say at the most, so. As for your request for noise and stuff, obviously there's noise bylaws and stuff like that, but we'll be respectable builders beside you and neighborly, so I mean, just be typical, your 7 to 5, Monday to Friday kind of thing, and maybe the odd thing on the weekend, but we'd have respect for everyone around there, so. Your height, I mean, obviously that will still be part of the site plan application as well, but our full intentions is single story. And you might get something like a 612 roof on it or something like that, but it would be comparable to the neighboring apartments down there, so.
There's one about traffic.
Yeah, safety and traffic, basically, it's gonna be no different than building a house in town, right? There's side street parking down John Street, there'll just be a couple trades vehicles there at a time. It's nothing gonna be too crazy going on, so I think that's it. If you have any other questions.
Oh, that's good, thank you. And I think there was something about sidewalks. There's sidewalks on one side of the street there now, is it not? And that's what our township, we do in the township is one side sidewalks, and I know we've done some work at that corner. Mr. Martina, you want to add anything?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, there's no current plans to put sidewalk on that side of the road. But there may be some repairs or some work to be done on the existing sidewalk in the coming years. But currently there's no warrant for sidewalk on that side of the road.
Thank you, Ms. Martina. I think we've answered all the questions you had, Anne Marie. Did we miss one?
No, just as long as the consideration when it comes to site plan.
Sure.
About safety.
Okay. All right, so we'll just turn this now over to council. Any questions from council members to the planner or to the applicant? Marlene?
Yes, through you, mate. Not really a question. I just think this is a great idea. I was initially a little concerned about the lack of a rear yard. But then, it occurs to me that not everybody wants a big house and a big yard, and this is fitting I guess what they're calling the missing middle of housing, where they're looking for housing, affordable housing for the people in the middle, the young families, the newly retired people. They're not looking for seniors housing. They're not looking for starter apartments. They want this sort of middle of the road housing. And we don't have a lot of that in our community. And I think this is a perfect fit for that lot. And I'm happy to see a development like this coming in here. And I'm sure it'll meet all the criteria of the surrounding areas request.
Councilor Douglas, go ahead.
Yes, I have two quick questions. One to the applicant through you, Mr. Mayor. Just building materials, is it going to be all brick? Or what do you anticipate for building materials?
We haven't gone through like a permit set or construction set of drawings yet, but I mean, as everyone's voiced their opinion around here, our scope would be to build something fitting for the neighborhood, right? Which would keep in mind with maybe some brick or stone, a durable building, basically.
One through you, Mr. Mayor, to Linda, just in terms of process, if they do go through a severance, there's another public point of contact at that point, just kind of building on Anne Marie's question or comment.
Well, it depends on what process they go through. If they go through the severance application process, yes, there is a public process there. They may be eligible for part lot control, and that is not a public process.
Thank you. Councilor Craven?
I got 2 or 3 questions, concerns. Will each unit have an entrance in their own driveway onto the street?
Would be the idea that they would have it off of John Street.
We're just wondering if it would be feasible to go with maybe 2 and have them at the back of the property further away from Main Street. So not entering onto John Street close to that intersection because the sightlines there are not good for that. People come, like you say, coming over the hill, a little extra speed on and so on. Just wondering if we had 2 entrances into that instead of 4, would that help the traffic at that corner, anything at the corner?
Councilor Craven, we're getting to a little bit to the weeds here of the site, and that's with the planner to work out. This is just a plan that they put in place with us right now, and we shouldn't get into those kind of weeds.
Okay, I support this in general principle. As we're all aware of, or shortly will be with all the ads, the provincial election, affordable housing is a big issue. It's likely more than likely going to be a big issue in the municipal elections this fall too. And this seems to me like a good way to have some affordable housing. Like Linda just mentioned, for people like myself that are retiring and looking for a little cheaper place to live than a $700,000 or $800,000 house and not ready for senior buildings yet. There's a lack of those kinds of buildings, and that might just be suitable for a couple like myself.
Thank you, Councilor Craven. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we start talking about intensification, I have like a cat on my shoulder that goes, because I don't like cats, and I tend to view it more as infiltration. I think people move to Drayton and small towns for specific reasons. And intensification is not one of them. However, this particular lot makes a lot of sense to me. The current zoning on it is archaic, probably ridiculous, really, if we think about it. So the proposed development seems to make a lot of sense. And Mr. Sean says, they've indicated, Anne Marie, I think, the developer and the development seems to be quite reasonable for the neighborhood. And, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's precious few lots within Drayton and the built up urban areas of Mapleton that are going to get this type of support from me. But I think this one makes a lot of sense. And, I feel like the developer and the builder, I think it'll probably be a reasonable, it's going to be noisy and dusty and it's not going to be a lot of fun. Let's be honest. Yeah, but once it's done, I think it makes a lot of sense for the neighborhood. And if intensification makes the folks over there smile, then so be it, right? So I think it makes sense for this lot.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Any other comments or questions at this point? All right. Would all interested persons attending please provide their full name, address, and postal code to be recorded by the planning and development manager? Do we have someone to circulate that, Mr. Clerk? We got it already? You're good? Perfect. Thank you. This public meeting is now concluded. Thank you for attending the public meeting. So we have here's item 6.1, moved by Councilor Craven, second by Councilor Martin, that the planning report regarding ZBA 2022-04, 74 Main Street fourplex plan Bolton survey lot 236, 74 Main Street East Drayton be received for information. All those in favor? That's carried. Moving on to the next item. Item 6.2, which is a housekeeping item. It's a public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and to give consideration to an application ZBA 2022-05 for proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The subject lands are located at all lands within the township of Mapleton. The purpose and effect is to, bear with me, there's a lot to read here. Purpose and effect of the application is to general typographical and mapping corrections. Number 2, add and update definitions, i.e. stacked townhouse, accessory, commercial, greenhouse, floor area. Number 3, classification of text for regulations related to lot coverage and setbacks for accessory structures. Number 4, clarify setback requirements for home industry buildings. Number 5, clarify and amend parking space size and parking requirements for automotive gas bars. 6, remove minimum floor area requirements from residential zones. 7, review criteria to allow C-can shipping containers on residential properties as an accessory. 8, add criteria for holding provisions related to servicing. 9, remove minimum floor area requirements from residential zones. 10, amend minimum required lot area and frontage for street townhouse to be consistent. 11, add provisions for stacked townhouse unit types. 12, add storm water management facilities as a permitted use in the OS1 zone. 13, amend criteria for accessory structures on land zoned natural environment. 14, amend the zoning and the property lot located on lots 183 and D184 Plan Rosse from IN 31.298 to RIA. And 15, remove and or amend site-specific exemptions for expired uses, redundant restrictions, and general adjustments and corrections. We'll now hear from the clerk on statutory requirements. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff can confirm agencies and Mapleton staff were provided with the required notice by prepaid first-class mail on April 21st. No issues or concerns were expressed by Mapleton staff. Proper postings were completed April 21st in the local community newspaper. The Mapleton Planning Report and chart prepared by Linda Redmond was received on May 3rd and included in the agenda package. And there were no ratepayer comments prior to the creation of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We'll now hear from Linda Redmond. Linda.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to go through the notice, but first I'm going to highlight the major changes. As we know, the current zoning bylaw was enacted in 2010. And as part of the general housekeeping, we review different criteria as an ongoing internal use. And then we have general housekeeping amendments every few years to make these changes. So this particular one, there's a couple big ones that I want to highlight. So the first one is the accessory structures. So there's some discrepancy in the lot coverage criteria for accessory structures in terms of whether it's ground floor area, total floor area, building area. They all mean different things and include different stuff. So we're always grappling with, if you have an accessory structure and it meets the lot coverage, which is the general size of, in the rural area, 2,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet, you can have the height of 22 feet. And within that building, you could technically put a second level in there but you're still, meeting the coverage and the height. And so there's a discrepancy about whether or not a second level is permitted. So staff's argument is, well, it doesn't change. The look of it's the same. The coverage is the same. The height is the same. Whether there's a second level within it, is that going to change anything? And we don't feel it does. And we get a lot of variances to allow that. So, and they're always approved. So we figure we might as well adjust the lot coverage criteria to take away all that uncertainty and make it more clear as to this is what's allowed in an accessory structure and this is what is not allowed, and just make it very clear. So we're still working on how that wording will look, but we think we're there because there's so many different definitions. So we have to still figure out how to phrase it so that we're not excluding other situations. The other thing we want to include, we have to clarify, is that we've introduced the second units a number of months ago into the bylaw. And one of the criteria was to allow a second unit within an accessory structure. And the definition of the floor area says, or of accessory structure, is that no habitable space is allowed. So we have to fix that up so that that's not contrary to the new second unit policies. The other matter that's been brought up is the opportunity to allow sea cans or shipping containers to be permitted within the urban areas as an accessory structure. So if that was going to happen, it would be treated like an accessory structure. So the same criteria, setbacks, location on the property, size, height, everything would still kick in, but they could take on the form of a sea can or be a sea can. Right now, sea cans are permitted as storage on farms, on industrial and commercial properties. There's limitations on the number, like I think it's up to 3 only, and they have to meet the same criteria of the zone in which they are located. But we don't allow them on the smaller rural lots, nor do we allow them in the urban areas like Moorfield, Drayton, and the hamlets like Elma, Wallenstein, those places. So it was a request that was brought forward to us to look at that. So I'm open to have a discussion with council about how they feel about that. The other big issues is they're all related to the growth plan. So again, as we've all worked through that process, it's been a year of growth plan meetings. We noticed that in the zoning bylaw that there's a minimum floor area requirement for dwellings within all the residential zones. And the building code regulates floor area. So we thought, why do we have this in the zoning bylaw? And the floor area minimums in some of the zones is like 1,000 square feet. And we all know that, with tiny homes and street townhouses and, these smaller type of dwelling types, 1,000 square feet might be too big. So we felt that it was maybe appropriate to remove that restriction in the zoning bylaw and let the building code take care of the minimum requirements for that. And that plays into the growth plan because then it opens up more opportunities for different dwelling types for intensification. Stacked townhouses is another new type of dwelling form, and we don't have a provision in our bylaw for them. So we are anticipating that we're going to start seeing those types of newer types of townhouse buildings. So we're adding it now to get ahead of it. So then the other smaller ones are to clarify requirements for home industry, the setbacks. So currently under the zoning bylaw, the setbacks are pretty significant for home industry building. So we're going to look at those and bring them closer into conformity with, other buildings on the smaller egg lots, similar setbacks. That's really, the other ones are very minor tweaks. Stormwater management facilities currently don't fall under any of our zoning categories, but we always place them in an OS1 zone. So just adding it to that permitted use list. The natural environment zone currently does permit a small 500 square foot accessory structure within the NE zone. The NE zone is very restrictive. There's really not too much that's allowed, but they do allow a small accessory structure. And what we're finding is happening is, they'll come in, they'll want a bigger one, and they go to the GRCA. GRCA says that's fine because usually the natural environment zone is a regulated area under the GRCA. So the GRCA will say they're fine with a larger structure, and then they come back here and then they have to go for a variance to go larger. So what we're thinking is that it maybe is more appropriate to just have the accessory structure criteria applicable in the NA zone. And if the GRCA is happy with it, then we're happy with it as long as it meets the 6.1 accessory structure criteria. And then the number 14 on the list, that's a very site-specific zone amendment for a property in Rothsay. And currently that property has an institutional designation on it with a site-specific exemption to allow a multi-unit residential use within the existing church building. And the back portion of that lot is actually a separate parcel, even though it's got that zoning on it, and the landowner wants to sell it. So we were concerned that if they sold it, they would have that zoning on it and then also be able to put a multi-residential use on it. So we wanted to get that zoning off and put the R1A zoning, which is your single family dwelling zoning that you see in Rothsay, which is more appropriate for that lot because of the size. So that's been included in this site-specific, in this housekeeping amendment. And that's the highlights. I'll just answer any questions if council has any.
Thank you, Linda. Are there any comments from those in attendance? Please take the podium and hit the button for the mic. And state your name and address, please.
I'm Heather Smith and I live in Alma on Queen Street. I only found out about this on Friday, so I haven't had time to completely review all the bylaws and all the, it's a few different websites and stuff to review it all thoroughly. And I just want to begin by asking, I still can submit written comments or choose to delegate for the May 24th meeting, correct? So if I don't want to say everything I'm, considering at the moment, I can leave some of it.
Mr. Clerk?
Ms. Smith, you can certainly delegate at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, because like I say, I don't want to waste your time on before I've done all my research. Okay, so first couple of things. On the announcement for this meeting, point number 6 and point number 9 read the same to me. So does that mean that there was a point number 9 that should have been there that's not there? Or there's really only 14 points?
Linda?
Did somebody say something about that?
No, through you, Mayor, it was an error. I doubled up. I should have removed it.
Okay, there isn't something that we should know about.
No.
Heather, go to push the button again, please. It only lets one person have the button on at a time.
I see, okay. Keep coming off.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, lot coverage. This is number 6.1.4C. No, pardon me. I want to do 6.1.4 A and B. Just bear with me for a moment here. Okay, so point A currently talks about the percentage of the property excluding habitation. I don't know how to say that correctly, but the definition is the combined total lot coverage of all accessory buildings and structures. So that means non-inhabited buildings and structures. But the wording in the proposal now is including habited and non-habited structures. So it changes the meaning. So I'm wanting to know, are you leaving 6.1.4A as it is and adding a second one that's going to be the overall property, including everything, habited and uninhabited? There's going to be a percentage that can't be covered on the lot. And if there is, what is that percentage? You understand what I'm saying?
Through you, Mayor, if I can ask directly. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're looking at.
Okay,
So
I'm looking at page 60 of zoning bylaw 2010-80.
oh, the actual zoning bylaw.
actual
Okay,
zoning bylaw.
page 60.
Page 60,
Yes.
6.1.4, number A. We're talking about
Oh.
the 10% of the property
Mm-hmm.
that can be used for accessory buildings.
Yes.
So the way that's worded is excluding the house, the habited building. The rest of the property, 10% of the rest of the property can be considered for accessory buildings and such.
Yes.
How you worded it.
Okay, so can I just say 614A is not being amended?
I know, that's why I'm asking you.
What,
What you've got worded here. Lot coverage, you haven't put a number there, so I'm asking, are you creating a new number under 6.1.4 that talks about the percentage of property that can be used for everything, including the habitat of the building? That's the way it's worded. I'll read it. Lot coverage means the percentage of the total lot area covered by all buildings. And covered by all buildings and structures, including accessory buildings and structures, blah, blah, blah. So is that a new point under 6.1?
so through you, Mayor, so the lot coverage you're referring to is the definition of lot coverage. That's that's just a definition of lot coverage in general. The section 6.1.4A is the lot coverage under the accessory structures, what's allowed as an accessory structure. They're separate from one another.
Okay, so lot coverage. Because I see. Sorry. Okay, just a second. Lot coverage. Lot coverage means the percentage of buildings totaled by all buildings. Okay, has the wording changed? You're just adding in, you're adding into that definition. Okay, so it isn't clear on this document that was handed out for this meeting. It isn't clear that what you're talking about there in the lot coverage is the definition on page 42 and not item 6.1.4.
Well,
Yeah.
I understand you have a lot of questions. Are we able to take these maybe offline and you can do that with Linda on one-on-one? She can explain things to you instead of doing it all through council. If you have any specific comments that you want to make, but if they're just general questions about clarification, can we keep those offline?
Can I just run down my page here?
Just go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So the document that you're looking at, just so you maybe understand how this is set up, you've got the first column is the section of the zoning bylaw and what that section is. So section 5 is definitions. Then you've got what the existing is and what the proposed changes are, and those are in bold. So that's how you utilize this chart. So that might clarify a few things for you. And yes, this is just for information for a discussion. We will have the discussion. The discussion might, go on for a few meetings and I will come back with suggestions and more information if necessary for clarification. And it's not until we're all satisfied, then I will prepare an actual amending bylaw, and that will be on the agenda and it will be available for the public's review before final reading at council. Okay.
I'm sorry. What I'll do is I'll speak with Linda rather than take up your time. And then I'll be able to clarify what I need to bring to council and what I don't. Okay? Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Heather. And I know we all want to get into this, and I totally understand. And I'm glad you're actually digging into it. And like I said, Linda will be happy to answer all of clarification and show you the different parts of what it all means. Great, thank you.
I just want to say for this meeting that I am opposed to sea containers unless they're going to have some strict regulations, because we already have one on our street. And, you know, it's got great big signage on the side of it, and it's been there for years. I know they're not allowed, but there has been one that's been sitting there for a long time. And I don't mind. I know that people have creative uses for sea containers these days, and some of them look really very nice. There's one out behind the restaurant in Alma that's, you know, painted. You don't even know it's even there. But if it's something that's, you know, rusty and it's got signage on it from its previous owner, et cetera, I don't think that's appropriate for being in town. And I think that it does have to fall under some sort of a permit use, just like a shed does. So if I'm correct, you know, a 10 by 10 shed would be allowed. You could have a whole bunch of those if you wanted garden sheds on your property. So I wouldn't want people having, you know, a whole bunch of 10 by 10 sea containers show up on their lots just because they were now permitted in residential and don't fall under some, you know, specific permit regulation.
Right, thank you so much. That's good input. Thank you. So we'll go to questions from council at this point in time on these changes. Mr. Council Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Linda, you've already answered my question about item 14. The other two are on item 3 and item 7. Heather, you've already stole my thunder on most of this stuff. So if I have a stroke before I die, it will be because of accessory structures and the conversations we've had here over the last 8 years. I don't know what it is about accessory structures that make people abuse the intent of a particular bylaw. So Linda, through you, Mr. Mayor, to you, Linda. So with this clarity that's coming for accessory structures, will it avoid issues like we've had in Alma in the past on the main street where people put up accessory structures and then it's a mezzanine, it's a second story, it's an OMB conversation, it's a debacle, really? Like, will the clarity that will be coming in the new language avoid circumstances like that moving forward, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, that was a very unique situation in Alma, and it was the wording of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment that caused, you know, that confusion. What we're thinking we're trying to achieve, and again, we want to hear what council feels about this, is that we are okay with a second level going in as long as the footprint does not exceed the lot coverage allowable. Because they are allowed the height. So if that means they can stick a second story in and have storage, do we care if the lot coverage is still intact? Rather than coming in for a variance to do like a really big shop because they need the space, you know, they can have the space on 2 levels in a smaller building. So that's what that would achieve.
Specific to that, like that particular, because I mean, it annoyed me. You know, we're going to preserve the architectural look of a particular lot, and then you go and stick a second story in. As long as everyone has, you know, the same sort of ground rules in place where the expectations will be clear, that's all I care about. If we're fine, if it's just footprint, not the height, like, cool, right? As long as we all know, right? That's really where I'm getting at. And then secondly, the sea cans, Heather, that request or that kind of proposal came up through me. I agree. We don't want Mapleton looking like rural Alabama, right? With sea cans popping up, the sight lines, the sightliness, like there's a lot of creative ways to use a sea can that look really neat. are really cool. They're recycling these sea cans. They look good, but like with the changes, I hope there's some sort of, and I don't know how you create the language around sightliness, right? What looks good and what doesn't is probably perception, if we're being honest, right? From neighbors to you, to me, people driving by. But I would agree with Heather in that, you know, we don't want unsightly sea cans populating Mapleton, whether that's within the rural boundaries or Goldstone or wherever it may be, right? So as long as there's a, you know, language or something around the fact that it needs to look okay, that would be my comments around that. Thank you.
Yeah, and the difficulty with look okay is who gets to make that decision of what looks okay. And that's certainly sea cans is something that we as council, we can choose not to allow sea cans. We still have that ability. This is just an option put in because we had that conversation before. So it's being brought forward by staff for us to actually have a discussion about and decide whether we want them or not. But certainly there are uses for sea cans. I know that in different communities have made sea cans into little tiny homes. They made sea cans into Airbnbs around little lakes and ponds. So there is, you know, you can certainly make them look nice, but again, that who makes a decision of what looks nice or not? And I certainly don't want staff to be put in a position if someone makes a pink sea can, as I was told, if that's okay or not, right? So what color makes it okay? So certainly discussion of council, whether we want them or not in this change. And that's something we should decide as well. Councilor Craven?
I certainly agree with Councillor Martin on the accessory sheds. We've got enough discussion over those the last few years. As long as we have some control over them, I don't have too much problem with them. But I will be adamantly opposed to sea cans. They're exactly what they say, a can. And I will be adamantly opposed to them.
Thank you. Councillor Craven? Councillor Rottens or Councillor Douglas, comments on this? Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may as well weigh in on the sea cans too. Like, similar to Councillor Martin, I'm okay with sea cans as long as it doesn't look like a sea can. Like, I don't care what color it is, it's still a sea can, but if you dress it up with, I don't know, brick or siding or something as a, you know, accessory dwelling unit or something, I'd be okay with that, but I just don't want it to look like a sea can.
And Linda, is there any way we can put that if we're going to allow sea cans? How do we, is it through bylaw? Is it through zoning amendments? Maybe we only allow them if they apply to have one in place instead of just them dropping on.
Well, that's kind of hard because we can't regulate color and materials really. Because then you're getting into I mean, unless you guys want to do a design guideline for sea cans. I'm not sure what we can regulate is how we have it regulated currently in the bylaw for the sea cans that are allowed. So they have to be, you know, there's very specific, they can't have advertising and display advertising on them. They can't be used as a fence. They have to be in free of rust, peeling paint, and any other form of visible deterioration. So that's already in the bylaw. So from that perspective, I think we've got the teeth. But how they're gonna look in the backyard of a residential property, I don't know how we can regulate that. Like tell them to put a roof on it, tell them to put siding on it, cladding. I don't think we can do that. I can look and see if there's other bylaws that do it, but I'd be shocked if there were, but you never know.
Thank you. I once contemplated putting a sea can in my yard until my wife told me that no uncertain terms, you're not putting a sea can in there because it's going to look horrible. And she's probably right. It would probably look horrible. But again, so it's complaint basis right now. If someone has a sea can that has lettering on it or advertising on it, it's by complaint basis. If someone complains about it, then our staff will go out and investigate that issue.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Patty?
That is correct.
Okay. So Councilor Douglas?
Yes, sorry, just on the sea cans. So I've worked on projects that had sea cans, and there's different types of sea cans in terms of structural stability, I guess. And, you know, they're subject to perhaps an engineer's review in support of a building permit. I'm just not sure our chief building official has, seen anything like that in terms of an application come in, or how would we deal with that?
Turn it over to Patty.
Through you, Mayor, we haven't had any applications. We've had one inquiry as to whether or not they were permitted on a residential lot. The majority of the CCANs we see are usually temporary construction site, which is, there's a provision for construction sites, like when they did Edge Mutual, they had the CCAN for all the equipment. That's a permitted use. If you were to go with the residential CCAN, there's all kinds of criteria we'd have to meet. There'd be engineering for structural integrity, energy efficiency. There'd be a whole number of things that would have to be met that way. For the accessory structures, if you were to allow them within the residential zones, like the ones, I haven't seen any, not that they've been reported to me, that are new. But if you wanted to go that route, they would have to be engineered. They would have to fall under a permit. They'd have to meet the requirements of the zoning. And then, yes, we get into maintenance, which then falls to a property standards enforcement issue. And just to, go with what the mayor said, one person might think pink looks really great and with a mural, and the neighbor next door might find it an eyesore, and that is definitely, we get, complaints about fences people don't like, let alone CCAN. So that's what we see in the department.
Thank you. And thank you for the question on that. And just so everyone knows, people listening on, we're not just talking CCANs, we're talking storage containers, shipping containers, storage trailers, anything of the like. You take the wheels off and you drop it onto the yard. So all that falls into the same category. Councilor Craven?
We talk about and worry about affordable housing. If we allow some of these CCAN things on residential lots, maybe some of the houses will become a lot more affordable.
Well, if you look at CCANs as being a housing option, it's basically, it's almost a trailer park is what you're doing. You're putting a bunch of CCANs in there. It's almost like a trailer park again. So we have regulations for that as well. Anybody else have a question or comment on any of these items? Going once. Councilor Martin?
So for you, Mr. Mayor, so process question. So this is a public meeting. So specific to.
Public meeting that we're going to receive for information.
Okay.
And staff will come back to us again on these topics. Correct, Linda?
Correct. If I may ask, I do need direction from council as to what they want included in the bylaw, because unless you want me to bring back more information for your review.
You want specific on every line, or just the one CCAN storage trailer bit that you're kind of alluding to?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. What I'm hearing is pretty much everything that's proposed. I haven't heard any negative feedback on that, but I have heard some maybe opposition on the CCAN. So I need to know, do I create criteria or not?
Thank you, Linda. I was going to get to that one just after I got the clarification there. So it will come back. So the process is we receive for information, staff go back, they rework this, bring it back to council again for more comments and public again. So before we send this back to staff, then the CCAN bit, I'm going to ask council one at a time. Do you want the CCAN in, or a CCAN and storage trailers and shipping containers to be allowed or not allowed? So say if you want it allowed, just give me a show of hands if you want it allowed in the areas. Go ahead. Do we want to change the current bylaw? The current bylaw being that it's allowed at commercial sites and industrial sites, but not at residential sites. Do we want to allow it at residential sites? So if you want to allow it, let's do it this way. If you want to allow it in residential sites, please raise your hand. You're saying, Councilor Craven.
This would include all hamlets and all residential lots. All residential lots, including all hamlets.
Well, it would not, you want to clarify, Linda? I'm pretty sure it's not, we're not talking farm properties, we're talking urban areas.
Correct. Right now on farm parcels, so the 86 acre parcels or over 25 acre parcels, they are permitted in a limited capacity. So this, what we're proposing is that we open it up to allow them in all residential and agricultural lots that are the rural agricultural lots as well. So the 1 acres and 2 acre lots or lots under 25 acres. So everywhere residential as well as where they are now.
Right, so are we good on that now? We clarified? So if you, Councilor Martin, you got your hand button, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I mean, from my opinion, if Planner Redmond's looking for some guidance, like if I would be in favor of sea cans and shipping containers, providing that if we can find some creative language around the sightliness of said container. If we can't, I'm out. So if we can find some language that we can have some regulation around what they look like cosmetically to address the concerns, I'll listen, but if it's gonna get too clunky, then I just assume.
It sounded to me,
Move
Councilor
away.
Martin, that it looked a bit clunky for Linda. Linda did say she could go and do some research on that. And we can say whether we can ask Linda to go back and bring that research back to us, if that's what council prefers. I look at it as, I don't think that we should have them on residential properties. I don't want to see them in residential properties in Drayton. I don't want to see them in residential properties in Alma or Warfield or Rossay or Glen Allen. I don't think they belong there. So if someone could come up with a proposal that they wanted to do some kind of sea can on some kind of little small lake they have on their 25 acres, that they want to have a proposal, we could probably look at that as a one-off later on. But do we want to allow them in our residential area? Mr. Craven?
We could maybe consider them on each one on their own individual merit. And you say if you have a 25 acre lot in your lake, one big event, something like that, each one on its own merit.
So council, well, I go with your direction. Do it. I'm looking at it as a yes or no, do we want to, but if you want to go and send it back to staff, bring us back more information, we can do that as well. Would you like to have staff come back with more information? You're good. So who would like to allow them, if you want to allow them on residential properties, as is stated by Planner Redmond, please raise your hand if you want to allow them on those properties. Okay, one with conditions. Okay, so it looks like we're not allowing the sea cans and shipping containers and storage trailers. So with that part, we don't need to fix up anymore or look at anymore. Go ahead.
I think maybe what we could do is add a provision in the current criteria that provides an opportunity for a minor variance so that we can review them as a one-off, and it's not through a zone amendment. So maybe we can put some wording into the bylaw at the very least to open up that opportunity for a variance should a residential property come forward with one that is appropriate.
Which would solve some of the problems of how it looks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
We
that'd
could
be- that'd be
have some
fine.
controls through that process.
Okay, so then we can look at them as Councilor Craven, and do it them one at a time if they meet some criteria, and then we'll be able to look at it. Councilor Martin.
When's the last minor variance come through that hasn't been approved? Like I get it, but Planner Redmond's point, it gives us some control, but not control here.
I'll have to ask staff that question then. Because my.
Yeah,
right,
it would go through the Committee of Adjustments.
Committee
You're
adjustments,
absolutely right.
which is no longer council, it's.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, just so council's aware, I'm sure you are, but we vet a lot of proposals ahead of time, and we advise them on whether staff can support it or not. So you might think that all the stuff that comes through gets approved, but it's probably because we knew the ones that did not meet the policy didn't even make it because they didn't want to, the advice they were given was that it wouldn't be supported by staff, so they chose not to move forward with it. So, that's usually the case, so.
So with that said, then Councilor Martin, the staff, if we give staff that control to vet it properly, to make sure that they're going to meet all the criterias on one-offs, before it goes committee of adjustment, that might be more appropriate. Yeah, but I was saying, no, but we're talking about adding in, like we already said, we don't want them in rural areas, except maybe if someone brings an application forward. Councilor Craven?
If one was approved at the Committee of Adjustment, would we not have an opportunity to appeal that?
Council?
Do we have a chance to appeal their decision?
Yes. But making a long process again. Go ahead, Linda.
Through you, Mayor. I mean, the other option is that they have to go through a zone amendment and then it would come to council. So that's your other option. It's just, when you're talking about a CCAN, it's part of the attraction to them is that they're inexpensive. So.
Maybe we just leave it as is and not allow them. It's getting a little complicated if you ask me. Anybody wanting to change? All right, we're stuck. They're out. All right. Any other comments that we need to get through here? Linda, do you see anything else you need any more information on?
No, I'm just open to meeting with the delegation to go over the chart and clarify items for Mrs. Smith. And then we can bring back a bylaw to the next, or it won't be to the next council, it'll be to the June council.
Right. Thank you. Please go ahead.
I couldn't find this on the website. Is there a minimum setback requirement for pools for septic tanks and wells? And the reason why I ask that is because, with the source water protection thing with Central Wellington now, that Alma's in, and I see on their website, when you look under their rules about pools and stuff, they have, this nice little map that shows how you have to, when you apply for a pool, you have to have a site plan that shows where the well is and where the setback is for the septic and all this stuff. What do we have?
Patty?
That falls within the scope of Part 8 of the Ontario Building Code, where we have to have, the tank has to be a minimum of 1.5 meters to a structure. In this case, the pool would be considered a structure. And the leaching bed, pipe, infiltrator, whatever the case may be, has to be 5 meters from a structure.
So
There is criteria under the Ontario Building Code.
Okay, and this,
It's like,
is that on the website? Sorry. On the website where it talked about, I think it was under frequently asked questions for permits and things like that, permits and applications. There was a thing there about pools and fences and stuff. Is it saying there that there's building code requirements for where that goes?
All buildings have to meet that criteria. And in this case, a pool is no different. It also has to meet the setbacks to the rear property and property lines the same as any other structure. So
Definitions say that pools are included as a structure.
it has a section under the zoning.
We'll look
bylaw.
into that, Heather. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I do have a resolution here, item 6.2, moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Craven, that the planning report regarding ZBA 2022-05 all lands within the township of Mapleton be received for information. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we're moving on to the next item then. Item 7 was delegations. We have RLB Chartered Professional Accountants. We have Murray Short here. Murray, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to walk through a bit of a presentation on the audit process and the financial statements. I will comment quickly that the financial statements themselves, including our auditor's report, is included in the finance department report, which will be presented by the treasurer later on the agenda. So I'll walk through the presentation. Does cover some of the statements, but the treasurer may have further comments to make when it comes to his report. So if we could just go on to the next page. So this is just a point highlighting some of the highlights of our audit process. First off, thank you to Mr. Morrison and the rest of the staff at the township. We've worked together with the current treasurer for several years now, and processes has become quite streamlined. We certainly appreciate the diligence of the staff and management team at the township. So just a few comments here. Materiality for our audit was $490,000. That's kind of a conceptual amount that we kind of come up with in order to ultimately come to our opinion in terms of the financial statements being presented and being materially correct. So that's the concept there. It's intended to be a number that's considered significant enough that it would impact decision-making at kind of the governance level, being council, senior management. Not that anything less is not significant, but it's a significant enough amount that it would impact kind of strategic decisions made at the council level. Our audit process has been complete to date, subject to your review and approval of the financial statements later in the agenda. We did not have any challenges with the audit, no concerns with estimates, any financial reporting regularities, no concerns with accounting policy choices or anything along those lines. We've done the work we've needed to do in order to be able to satisfy ourselves about the financial statements and come to our audit opinion. No significant internal control deficiencies, no independence issues. As auditors, we're required to be independent of the subject matter of our audit, and so we can confirm that we have no vested interest in the financial results of the municipality. Very clean audit, as I said. We had one adjusting entry, which we identified and has been reflected. No unadjusted differences, so that's just about as clean as audits go. So certainly appreciate that from staff. The audit report itself, again, is in the finance department's report. So I'll just highlight quickly that we have come to the conclusion the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's the accounting framework under which all municipalities report. And we have issued that clean audit opinion as a result of our audit process. So the statement of financial position, or more commonly known as the balance sheet in the for-profit world, shows the assets, financial assets, liabilities, non-financial assets, including your infrastructure, your tangible capital assets, and ultimately your accumulated surplus. That's at the point in time at the end of your fiscal year, which is December 31st, with comparatives from December 31st, 2020. And if we just go on to the next slide, it's going to be very small. It is shown in the financial statement package as well. I will just highlight a few points if we move on to the next slide, please. The municipality's cash position continues to be strong. The green bars represent the kind of cash position. So at the end of the year, just over $20 million. We compare that to the annual cash outflows going out the door for operating expenses, capital acquisitions, debt repayments, all those sorts of things, which were to the tune of about 15 million. So you have cash on hand to cover your operating and capital cash outflows. That balance, sorry, if we can just go back for 1 second, that balance is about 133%. So it's down slightly from last year. as a result of significant capital expenditures in the 2021 fiscal year, but it's still a very strong financial position to be in from a cash standpoint. Next slide shows taxes receivable, and we're comparing this now this year to the total tax levies. In prior years, we compared it just to the municipal tax levies, but obviously the municipalities collecting taxes on behalf of the county and school boards as well. So this is a percentage of the total. And your tax receivable position is really quite a strong position. You can see about 5.2%. That's well below the average of our other municipal clients. It's also in the low end of the range that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing considers when they look at the risk profile of municipalities. So strong position to be in from a tax receivable standpoint. Municipality's done a good job of collecting on its taxes receivable. The next slide shows tangible capital assets. So this is all of your land, buildings, roads, water and wastewater, all of those infrastructure needs, and it's comparing additions as a percentage of your total tax revenue. So we do that to compare to other municipalities. We have municipalities of varying sizes, so to try and normalize for the different sizes of municipality, we compare based on total tax revenue. You can see that in 3 of the 5 years, your capital asset additions were in excess of what we would see from other municipalities. So you're kind of right in the same ballpark. You're investing in infrastructure on that basis, at least consistently with other municipal governments in the region. Next slide shows capital assets versus budget and versus amortization. I'll just highlight the blue and yellow bars in each case. Blue is the asset additions, that's your purchases of new capital assets. The yellow is amortization, and we compare those two just as a means of trying to kind of assess whether the municipality is staying on top of its infrastructure needs. If the blue line was significantly below the yellow, more often than not, that would be an indication that you aren't. But the fact that the blue line is above the yellow in all of the past 5 years means that the municipality has been staying on top of its infrastructure needs, at least as a comparison to the amortization. Next slide just shows the capital asset additions and the funding, just for kind of informational purposes. And if I just look really quickly, most of the funding is coming from reserves and reserve funds. Not surprisingly, that's why you have those set aside in each of those years. Significant investments in particular in 2019 and 2021 in your capital assets. And so you can see the significant investments there. Next slide just talks about the statement of operations. So this is the revenues and expenses of the municipality for the year. It shows the budgeted numbers as well as prior year numbers. So you have some kind of comparisons there as well as expenditures by department. I will highlight very quickly, and again, with very small numbers, this will come up in more detail in the treasurer's report. But you can see that revenues are up by about 600,000. Expenses pretty comparable, only up by about 45,000. So the municipality had a surplus of about $3.25 million on the year. That is by design. In the prior year, your surplus is about 2.7 million. That's part of what's going into funding your infrastructure needs. And obviously with those significant investments required in capital assets, you've been able to do that without depleting your reserves and reserve funds. Next slide just shows expenditures by department. Not surprisingly, close to half your budget going to your transportation department. That's pretty consistent with a lot of our municipal clients. And the next slide just shows those same comparisons over the prior 5 years. The next statement is the statement of changes in net financial assets. So this is showing, reconciling the surplus that I mentioned of about 3.25 million, and then kind of adjusting for the capital asset activity. So again, $6.5 million in additions, but $3 million of amortization means that that's kind of a net change in your cash position. You're investing significantly in the infrastructure, and your net financial assets wound up the year pretty comparable to where they were at the end of last year, at just under $9 million. Statement of cash flows shows kind of the change in cash activity. It kind of makes some of those same adjustments for the capital asset additions. In total, your cash position increased by about $2.5 million, that coming largely because of an increase in your reserves and reserve funds. So the surplus net of the new loan taken in the year, all those capital asset additions has meant that you haven't had to deplete your reserves and reserve funds to fund those capital asset purchases in the year. The schedule of accumulated surplus shows the breakout of the $61 million overall accumulated surplus. Most of that being your investment in capital assets. Not surprisingly, you have significant investments in the roads and infrastructure for the municipality. I will just point out the reserves and reserve funds down below in total are up. Your reserves down somewhat, your reserve funds up fairly significantly on the year. So again, not depleting those, funding those capital asset purchases. The one note that I will highlight is the deferred revenue note. So these are your obligatory reserve funds. They aren't included within the accumulated surplus for the municipality. They're considered a liability because they're restricted for specific purposes. This is primarily your development charges and gas tax funds. The development charge fund itself up to 1.94 million from 1.29 the year before. Gas tax you spent just under $1 million from in the year. And so that balance has decreased by about 300,000 down to about 326, but those obligatory reserve funds collectively up to about $2.4 million from about $2 million the year before. And the next graph I will just highlight really quickly amalgamates all those reserves and reserve funds, including the development charges and gas tax. Comparing to our other municipalities, you're in a strong position in terms of the status of those reserve funds at the end of the year. About 243% of your total tax revenue set aside in those reserves and reserve funds. The average of other municipalities is about 182. So notwithstanding that we don't comment on what your infrastructure needs will be going forward in terms of the financial status of those reserves and reserve funds, municipalities in strong shape. But again, wouldn't want to comment on what your needs will be for infrastructure investments in the future relative to other municipalities. So last slide before I take any questions is just a bit of a next steps. So we will communicate with management about anything from the date we wrapped up our audit to today's date. This is the date that we will sign our audit report subject to your approval. So we need to make sure that anything that has changed from the year end or from our audit field work to today doesn't impact the financial statements themselves. Subject to your review and approval after the treasurer's report later in the agenda, we'd anticipate your approval of the financial statements, at which point then we'll be in a position to finalize our audit report. The last step in the process is the submission of the financial information return to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. With the completion of our audit and the approval of financial statements, then the treasurer will be in a position to make that submission in time for the May 31st deadline. So those are my comments, but I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Murray. Questions from council to Murray on the report? Oh, we seem to be good. Thank you, Murray.
Thanks very much.
Have here resolution 7.1 that council moved by Councilor Craven, second by Councilor Martin, Township of Mapleton Council received for information presentation by RLB Chartered Professional Accountants Murray Short regarding the Township of Mapleton 2021 financial statements. All those in favor? That's carried. Now, as council's indulgence, we're going to make a little change here. We're going to move to item 9.3.1, which is the traffic calming policy that we had an education session on earlier. And I have here moved by Councilor Otten, second by Councilor Douglas, that Township of Mapleton Council received Public Works Report PW 2022-08 dated May 10th, 2022 regarding the Mapleton traffic calming policy for information. And further, that Township Mapleton Council received for information the presentation by Triton Engineering Services Limited as delivered at the traffic calming workshop on May 10th at 6 p.m. and attached here too. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Matina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you and to council. So we've all been here for the education session earlier this evening. The policy was explained by our consulting engineer, Triton Engineering. It's a tool for staff to use to mitigate any biased decision-making, I guess you can say, relative to any traffic calming requests that we may get. So it's a tool that the staff will use to make a decision that will benefit the community in an efficient and effective way, without any criticism from anyone that guidelines were not followed. In addition, the policy does allow for risk mitigation to the township with respect to addressing issues that come our way. And even though the policy procedure allows for a time frame to complete the actions that may come forward from it, the fact that we have a policy in place and act upon requests is a mitigating factor for us from a third-party claim perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Matina. I'll open it up to any further questions from council then to Mr. Matina. All right, all those in favor then? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you both again. Moving on to item 8.1. We have here moved by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Craven. Township Mapleton Council received for information the draft minutes of the Mapleton Parks and Recreation Committee meeting held on April 26, 2022. Well, where did Ms. Martina go? We'll leave it over to Amy. Have any questions on that report? Marlene, you have anything to add to that?
No, through you, just highlighting some of the items on there, that pickleball is so popular that have to add 2 more courts, and that the summer camp, there's 190 spots already filled. The Rotary Park is going to commence construction shortly, and some drop-in ball hockey would be interesting to have, but they need chaperones to be in charge of that. So like as a summer thing on the arena floor. So lots of new and interesting rec opportunities for everyone of all ages in our community.
Perfect. Yes, I agree. There's lots going on. And again, Amy and her staff are doing a fabulous job of putting programs in place. And we're really excited about the park and how that's coming. And Lucas is putting in his group are putting a lot of work into that, and as well as the Rotary Club. The fundraising is coming quite nicely. And I know Lucas was doing some tree planting and other shrubs. I believe you were doing that at some point in time. And yeah, so we got some work done at the park. That's fine. We know you're working at the park, Lucas. Yes. I don't want to delay you anymore. But we do thank you for the hard work that you're putting into that, Lucas. Go ahead, Councilor Ottens.
Yes, I just noticed one other thing that Lori Spalding of the Rotary Club noted. It's that there's going to be the 150th anniversary of the Rotary Club on July 16. The event's still in its planning stages, but just to set that date aside, there are different things that they have in the planning stages that hopefully make it a big community event. And that they're doing car shows again in the summer months, the Rotary Club.
Thank you. And I'll go back to the delay. I think the 16th of July is also the opening of the park. Is that the plan?
So far, yes.
So-
that is what is,
So far, that's,
Yeah, and right now everything's on.
okay, so it looks like the opening of the new park at the Queen Street in Drayton with, the plan right now is on July 16th as well. So that's something that we should all be attending and happy about. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got two comments, quickly. So the drop-in ball hockey seems like a great idea. For the life of me, I don't understand the chaperone part though. How's that different than, stick and puck, or how could the on-duty arena attendant not act as a chaperone? And then secondly, the streaming service. So pretty much everyone knows we got cameras at the arena, and not everyone, there are a select few people that would love to utilize said streaming service. I know there's privacy concerns. However, could that not simply be addressed by your mere physical presence? You're on camera, or through registration through minor hockey skating club. Like if I want to watch Community versus Listowel on a Monday night, like it's a great opportunity. Like it's 30 feet up and 50 feet out. Like everyone's fully dressed. I'm not sure the privacy concerns is like, could we not get this program up and going? Like it's a great thing. We've got the infrastructure in place. People want it. You know, I don't think there could be that many privacy concerns that we couldn't overcome. Is there a way we could get around that and get it up and going?
I think privacy will go to Ally for privacy, I think. And Amy will talk about the ball hockey. How's that?
Sorry.
The privacy, we did go through the lawyers to make a letter before. Some of the groups, I believe, did have some concerns about it. But I just believe that that would have to go through the lawyers to get a letter to the groups. But if we had to sign up, I don't want to say anything too specific because the lawyers would have to draft up for the privacy part. But I know our old lawyers did draft up a plan, but we could probably get the new ones and send that out to the groups to go forward and have that streaming. There was somewhat of a concern, an issue with it that you couldn't stream it 24/7. So the arena staff would have to understand on how to update these programming so that they can put it on for the times of games. So if there was a group that didn't want to be streamed, that could be dealt with in that their games aren't streamed, but other ones are.
In regards to the ball hockey, I had a similar thought as you did, Counselor Martin, that hoping that potentially just the staff that are working at the arena would be able to sort of monitor what's happening. I think the concern was that the potential of the amount of kids that could show up just might be too many to, depending on their ages, to oversee what's happening. But we definitely could take a look at that and maybe do it by age group. And if they're a certain age and above, they could be there at a certain time, and certain ages and under could be there with a guardian or someone to help them out if required. So we certainly could look at putting a program together for the summer, if that's something that you think would be beneficial. I'm sure it would be.
Thank you to both of you. And then now we'll leave it up to staff's hands to see if we can work out the ball hockey bit, because I think it'd be an awesome idea to have the ball hockey. And of course, the legal aspects of who can be videoed and who can't, that's something the lawyers definitely need to be involved in so that we don't find ourselves in a jackpot. Councilor Martin.
So just for context, Drayton minor hockey registration starts on May 15th. It could be as simple as a simple waiver included in the registration process. It's an online process that Chad McKay looks after, and it could be included that quickly and that simply for that particular event. I mean, obviously there's a lot of other user groups for the arena, but
we'll leave that to Mr.
registration
Barron.
process
We'll leave
would
that to
be
Mr.
simple.
Barron and the staff to see if we can get something from the lawyer before then. Any other questions or comments on this report? All right, all those in favor of receiving it for information? It's carried. Moving on to item 9.1, moved by Councillor Craven, second by Councillor Martin. The Township of Mapleton Council received for information Billing Department Report BD 2022-07 dated May 10th, 2022 regarding April month end and year to date information. I know that CBO Wright, the information is there for you. If you have any questions, he's open to answer any questions. Do we have any questions for the CBO? Okay, then all those in favor of receiving that for information? It's carried. Moving on to the finance side of things. Item 9.2.1, we have moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Douglas. Township Mapleton Council received Finance Report 2022-08 dated May 10th, 2022 regarding the 2021 Treasurer Statement, Development Charges Reserve Fund as information. Turn that over to our Finance Director, Mr. John Morrison.
Through you, your worship, this is a standard report that we have a legal obligation to report on each year, and it has to be made public to the ministry and the development community upon request, though we tend to put it on our website for anyone to look at. Now, I changed the structure this year a little bit because I wanted to get across the point about how growth pays for growth. So what you should be interested here is that this year I've left the 1.943, the same number you see on the balance sheet, but we've already made a significant commitment that will be undertaken this year for the water tower, where we're going to be expecting the development community to pay $2 million for that. So how does growth pay for growth? Well, you can go out and get a debenture and make the $648,000 that you're being paid, pay for some of that. Or you could transfer money, which is what's in our budget of $1.7 million, and the development community could pay for that. So at the end of for the financial statements, the deferred revenue section for development charges can always be zero. Whatever money came in money can go out, as long as you have a funding source and you're choosing the right projects to fund from the development charge, from the development study. So I just was bringing this to you because this is a thought process that I would like, we'll explore a little bit more next year. Obviously, by next year, we'll probably have the DCs collected in full to pay for the water commitment. But you could actually start funding a lot more other important projects that are found in the DC background study if you found an alternative source of funding for the development community to repay with interest. So if there's any further questions, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. And I know, and I thank you, sir, you've been working really hard to try to find alternative ways of doing the financing for our water infrastructure. I really appreciate the digging you're doing into what other communities are doing. I know that's a long process for you, but I do appreciate that the amount of work you're putting into this and bringing it forward to us. So, and I know from talking to you, how you're trying to make sure that our water rates and wastewater rates don't have the big jumps and have a nice steady incline instead of a big hike here and there. So I do appreciate all the work you're putting behind that. Any questions to Mr. Morrison on this? Councillor Craven.
Just one question, John. I'm not sure if it's you want now or a little later about the reserve funds. Now that the medical center's debenture is paid off, there'll obviously be more left over in that fund. Will it all go to reserves that it has in the past, or will some go into a general fund?
Through you, your worship, I believe that in this year's budget, we are putting some of the excess money coming from the collection or the rent from the medical center towards the capital reserves.
Thank you. Further questions on this report on the development charges reserve? Treasurer statement. All right. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, we have moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Otten. Township of Mapleton Council received Finance Report 2022-09 regarding the 2021 year-end operating variances and surplus as information. And further, council approves the 2021 audited financial statements. Mr. Morrison.
Through you, your worship. This report is kind of intended, and it's intended each year to help you understand when you see an audit statement saying our surplus is $3.2 million. I come along and say, well, it's actually $38,000. And it's quite a leap going between generally accepted accounting practices and our modified cash approach so that we can collect the right amount of taxes. So this is reconciliations to help kind of visualize how we get from such a large number to such a small number. So this is the second. So the rest of the report is basically going through this kind of conversations we've had with you with each quarter, where the pressures are, where we're seeing, revenue decreases at our arenas and our community centers because of the closures from the pandemic. But we've saw some offsets in some of our utilities. Insurance hit us hard because of the market conditions of that industry. But generally, we saw some real pressures on our revenues again in 2021. That was helped to be offset by some of the cash coming from other levels of government. And that's why overall, Mr. Murray would have said our revenues are up, but no, they're not. We really, our own personal revenues are down. We're happen to receive the benefit from other levels of government so that we are still at a break-even point in terms of our books. The other area of highlight that I'll zero in on is the capital program itself. So we did spend 6.5 million or capitalize $6.5 million this year, but we still have another $3.6 million in outstanding commitments. So we committed ourselves to over $10.5 million in purchases this year. And that's a significant increase that's going on here. We're still in a good position in terms of our annual debt repayment limit. We could, if we were to go for broke, go out and debenture another $10 million and still be within the annual debt repayment limit. I'm not recommending that, but we're in pretty good financial health in that respect. So if there's any other questions that you'd like me to specifically draw upon, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. It's good to be in a position that we are able, if we need to go out and get $10 million. But I agree, let's not do that right now. We're doing really well on not going out for money on our capital budgets, but try to keep that trend. Questions then from council members to Mr. Morrison on this report? On the operating variances? Not seeing any then? I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving this for information? It's carried. Thank you. We're done 9.3, so we'll go to 9.4, which is moved by Councillor Douglas, second by Councillor Ottens, that the Township of Mapleton Council received Recreation Report 2022-05, dated May 10th, 2022, regarding the Arena Advertising Board fee fundraising for information. And further, that Township of Mapleton Council approved the changes to the fees and charges document as recommended. And we turn that over to Amy and Ally.
Good evening, council. We have taken some time to chat with the arena and together about our arena boards and the fact that they are looking very bare. And we would like to work together with our user groups and as staff departments to help change that and help. By doing that, we're going to be hoping to work with our user groups and support them with the fundraising efforts to be able to sell our arena boards and make money for their user group of their choice. So the idea is that the user groups would be able to take the package that will help them develop out to businesses or different companies that they may have that would be interested in purchasing a board at the arena. Those businesses would be able to complete the forms and return them with payment here to the office. And we would be able to send a portion of those funds towards whichever user group they had chosen to support. We just thought that this would be a great way for us to all work together and help out our user groups at the same time. So tonight, what we were hoping is that you guys would take a quick look at the idea and let us know your thoughts, and that you would also take a look at the fees and charges that are associated, as we would be making some changes to the bylaw when it comes to the arena advertising boards, and hopefully approve those so that we can move on with the next steps of the plan.
All right. Thank you both. So we'll open it up to questions and comments from this. I think it's a great idea that we provide some funding or a way to add some funding to our user groups that wish to play along. Councillor Ottens.
For you, Mayor. Yeah, great idea. Just fortuitously, I happened to bring that up at the Parks and Rec meeting, so the minds are thinking alike. If a group buys an ad, are they in charge of then creating the material, the ad, and putting it on, or does the township do it? Like, how do you maintain consistency of the size and the look and the style? Or does each group just create and put up their own ad?
Ally?
Either of us can really answer. So they're given a size, and the business or group who's paying for it is in charge of getting the design and paying for it to be put up. And then they're paying us kind of like an advertising fee to keep it there.
And those designs, do they have to go through an approval process to our staff before they can put it up?
Not necessarily. Obviously, we see what is going to go up there prior to it being posted. It is the arena staff that typically does put them up. So whatever does go up there would certainly be appropriate for the community.
Yeah, we want to make sure that whatever goes up is appropriate. Absolutely. Any other questions? Councilor Craven?
Yeah, I go to a few arenas trying to keep up with my grandsons, and I see that almost every arena I go to, far more advertising on their boards than we have here. And every time I see that, I think, are we missing out on something here? Any initiative to increase this would be good.
Councilor Craven, further questions? Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Amy and Ally. Thanks for your thought process in creating this program. I like it. I think, to Councillor Craven's point, and as you've noted in your report, the boards are pretty bare, right? Like it's there's a couple of advertisements up there, but it'd be great to showcase and show that our community is actually a happening place, because it really is. It's just not reflected on the boards at the arena. While I enjoy where you've gone with this, I would love to see it go a little bit further. $100 is not nothing. It's something. But I would suggest, and I don't have the numbers to back me up, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, that our revenue we generate off the advertising at the arena is not significant at the moment. So like, I would suggest that even like a 50-50 split on the fees that come out of the result of these advertising would be, we might get more uptick from the different service clubs versus $100. I know like the fees have been upped, but if we've got other people out there soliciting the advertising, and if the township does a solicitation and gets the sponsorships, I mean, we get the full fee, right? But if the figure skating club or minor hockey or whomever goes out there and has somebody that wants to have their presence known at the arena for $100, like, I don't know how, you know what I mean? Like, I think something a little more substantive, because at the end of the day, it's going to benefit the township as well. So I would suggest a little more of a healthier split maybe with the different service clubs. And when we talk about groups, as a second question, if I may, do we include all groups, like the Optimists, the Kinsmen, the Canets, different groups who may, it's not just minor hockey, it's not just the skating club, it's not just Reach Forth that have had, revenues take double-digit dips the last couple of years. If there's other groups that want to help make our arena look vibrant, would we, I guess, what's your vision on what will be included in the groups?
Ally?
So I'll start off with kind of the first part of that. That's good. We went based off of so we looked at a bunch of municipalities around. So these were kind of the prices, adding that, so the $100 for some of them were kind of the highest of that we were comfortable charging comparison to other municipalities around. So taking that up anymore would be a lot for us, but that is a decision if you guys want to take revenues down a bit so that we can fill more spaces and the groups can get a bit more. We just kind of put the top limit of what we would feel comfortable charging compared to the other municipalities around in their fees. We were kind of in between a bunch. We took some smaller ones, some larger ones. So that's the main part. So that would be up to council if you'd like to make the split a bit different. And then the groups, we just kept with the ones that use the ice surface. It keeps it, that was our first part. If you guys would like to do all groups, that's something else. It's just, it is a very large list once you open it to that. So and I don't know if it would be a thing if groups are competing to businesses to get out there and stuff, which would be great. Our arena would be full. I'm not sure if that is a thing or not, but it definitely could be considered if everybody's interested in that for all groups.
Thank you. So who's going out to actively get these boards filled? Whose job is it?
So our thoughts were that the user groups themselves would do it. So we would help them develop their packages that they would be able to hand out. And if they were to get that bring the sponsor to the advertising board, then they would be the ones that would benefit. And so we hoped that it would be collaborative with them, that we would help provide the packages for the fundraising and that they themselves would take them out to the community.
So I'm going to throw this other question out then. So you have raised it up to say the first one to $650, $100 goes a group. So the township still gets $550. And maybe this is a question for Mr. Morrison or Mr. Matina. These fees that are currently in place, what is that money used for? So it's arena boards, $550, $375. If we were to sell those, or ice service or $1,200, what is that money used for? We put it right back into the arena?
Through you, your worship, it offsets the operating costs. I mean, you just looked at the finance year-end report. What are we losing at PMD last year? It's significant, I think. We're losing $541,000 last year. So that's why the fees are trying to recover some of that.
Okay, so it's to offset some of that fee. So to Councilor Martin's point, you got a user group going out to solicit for a board, see the arena board, ice level, $650, they're getting $100. We're using the other part of the money for offsetting the cost. So Councilor Martin, it's just the question of, do we want to give more money to the user groups? or to offset the cost, which I guess if I'm looking at this now, we don't have many users on the boards right now, so we're really not getting a lot of revenue out this at this present time. So would it make any big difference if we did a 50-50 split, as Councilor Martin said? I don't think it would kill us. Councilor Douglas.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you might be more successful with the user groups selling the space if they're getting a bigger chunk and then, benefits all parties. And they're not inconsequential costs either. Like on top of this, I think it's about $400 or $500 to have the actual ad prepared as well. It's a special material. So, you have people investing about $1,000 first year anyway. It's cheaper if you renew it, but so, there are substantial investments for these ads. So, I'd support what Councillor Martin's proposing and giving a bit more of a kicker back to the user group.
Thank you, Councilor Douglas. Councilor Craven.
Any revenue we get off these empty boards in the future is a heck of a lot more than we've been getting in the past.
Right. And I agree with you. So Councilor Martin, do you want to follow up on this?
I'm gonna jump down a quick rabbit hole if I might. Yeah. So this revenue, so my rabbit hole. So new business is coming to town, right? So here's your 2 acres of under market value land in our industrial park. Do we have, or could we have like here's a sponsorship package, or here's, you want to get your rubber boot manufacturing company, visible, you're here in Drayton now, or you're here in Moorfield, for $650, you could get an arena board, right? Like this is simply from a township side now, not user group. Like, do we have something like that in place? Like, hey, welcome to town. Here's your, here's an opportunity for you, do or don't. But is that something we do, or?
The welcome wagon.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
the
you.
welcome wagon.
Ally.
Well, we don't currently, but that is definitely something that we can get back on board with, especially with Welcome Wagon not around anymore. Definitely. And as we do ribbon cuttings and stuff, that would be a great opportunity to bring some things like this, especially advertising. I know some businesses kind of ask and we direct them that way, but it would be good to kind of give it to them off the front or off the hop when we're there anyway. And definitely something we can do in the future.
So to Mr. Martin, to Councilor Martin's point, and Councilor Douglas has agreed with them about the 50-50 split. I'm going to put a question out to council. Are we satisfied with the prices that are there with a 50-50 split, or would you like to change them to a higher value? Do you think that people will pay for that to be aboard? So instead of $650, if you went to $750 or $800 and split it half and half, $400 goes to user group, $400 to the township. I don't know what the high level is, and maybe either one of you can step into that, what the high levels are. If we're going too high, you need to tell us because you're the ones that are putting this package together and you did the research. So I'll let you speak first.
Through you, Mayor, the prices in the red are certainly at the top end of what we would be comparable to neighboring municipalities. But they're not doing the same thing in collaborating as a fundraiser for our user groups. So I think because we're taking a different approach to this program, we could probably play with it a little bit, but we would want to make sure that we're not necessarily scaring people away. So whatever council is comfortable with, I think Ally and I are happy to work within that parameter.
Right, so I leave it up to council to comment on that. Councilor Ottens.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I would like to keep it competitive with surrounding municipalities. I wasn't 100% on the 50-50 until you said that the user groups are the ones that will be selling the spaces. So if they're doing the work, they should benefit. I would change maybe the amounts, the second, third, and fourth one to make it easier to split in half, maybe like just make them 450, 300, and 300. Something simple like that. So it's easier to make it a 50-50, and then that's not really that big of a jump price wise, but otherwise, I think it's more palatable to a business when they know half of the money that they're using goes to a group like that. And I 100% agree that it should stick with the 3 groups that use the ice.
three groups right now. What if another group comes in, we certainly want to be open to that. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, for feedback on prices, I think the prices that Ally and Amy have identified, are probably on the, for me, are on the high end. I'd certainly even support the original or the OG prices that are listed in the fees and charges as well. I think one or the other would be palatable. I think you get a little high, then you start.
Thank
It's
you for that
awkward.
feedback. Councillor Craven, your feedback? Yeah. Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, I'm okay with the prices in the red, but I'm just wondering if we should also be considering the new half ice boards that we have. If there's an opportunity to place ads on there and then a lower rate, because they're only used a fraction of the time. Just a thought.
Good thought.
I can give you feedback on that.
Yeah, please.
Drayton Minor Hockey actually owns the boards. So there's that.
So they'll want all the revenue, just saying. But maybe they can sell all those out, right? Well, that's true. So any other comments or questions right now? I'm understanding it, leave it as the red numbers and leave it as is. And do I'm hearing from council a 50-50 split on this. Is that anybody opposed to that 50-50 split? All right. So let me read this again. Moved by Councilor Douglas, second by Councilor Ottens. Township Mapleton Council received Recreation Report 2022-05 dated May 10th, 2022 regarding arena advertising board fee fundraising for information. And that Township Mapleton Council approved the changes to the fees and charges document as provided. And we know that staff will make that change to a 50-50 split. All right. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor of this? That's carried then. Thank you very much for the work, ladies. Next, we got item 10, moved by Councilor Otten, second by Councilor Douglas, that the bylaw number 2022-030 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2010-080 being a zoning bylaw for the Township of Mapleton be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with a corporate seal. Comments, questions? All in favor? It's carried. Correspondence for council information, correspondence for council's information. We have a number of them there, 9 of them. Anybody wish to comment on any of these? Don't see any, all right. Any notices of motion today? Any other business, item 15? Councillor Ottens.
Yes, just a reminder of the Historical Society's event on Friday at the arena. This has been planned first for 2020 and then for 2021, so it's gonna happen now. It's a retrospective on Conestoga Dam, just telling why it was built, how it was built, just a bit of history on it, something that's been there forever and a lot of people might not know. So doors open at 6:45 for kind of a social time. The speaker will start at 7:30 and there'll be some photos and stuff. And I have a little story of my own to tell, so I'll be there too.
So Councillor Ottens is going to be a storyteller Friday night. All right. This Friday, Historical Society, 6:45. And for those seniors in here, the Senior Centers for Excellence is having a luncheon with the some bison beef, I understand, and Amanda's going to be there speaking about the bison. And you're serving bison, bison stew. So Dennis, you can come up with a bison stew if you want. Any other business? Okay, we don't have a closed session. We'll go to the last item, confirmatory bylaw. Moved by Council Douglas, second by Councilor Ottens, that bylaw number 2022-031 being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council of the corporation of Township of Mapleton be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with a corporate seal. All those in favor? That's carried. Lucas, we're off the air.